this is my, I guess, monologue, because there's nobody else here, about how you think about topics for your independent study. Right now, 3 of your teachers, I thought it was only 2, but it's Ms. Mann as well, who works with Southern Hemisphere students. 3 of your teachers are engaged in examining for the independent study for IB film. Myself and Ms. Sutherland are dealing with HL students. I don't know, I think Ms. Mann is also dealing with HL students. But that doesn't really make much difference, because in choosing a topic for the independent study, it's the process for both HL and SL are the same. So, your topic, what should it be? Well, unlike many candidates appear to think, the topic for the independent study is not the comparison between films. So it wouldn't be the comparison between, say, representations in one film tradition and another. But the topic for the independent study is an issue of film history or film theory. And you need to be very, very clear when you're choosing your topic that that is your focus, that your independent study will be about the issue of film history or film theory. So I would hear you asking yourselves, well, how do we choose an issue of film history or film theory? We haven't done that much of it. Well, actually you have. You've looked at certainly various different periods and traditions in film history. So, for example, German Expressionism, the French New Wave. You've looked at film noir, which is a tradition rather than a genre or a style. And I think you may have looked at the realist schools as well, neo-realism, for example, and maybe even dogma. So you've certainly tackled areas of film history. In terms of film theory, I recall that back at the very beginning of the course, we looked at ideas about gender representation. These weren't developed at that time, but this is a research project, so you would need to develop your own ideas through research. So, how do you go about choosing it? Well, first of all, you need to find your topic, and I can suggest 1 or 2. And suggest approaches which you might take to ones you're already thinking about. So, for example, if you are interested in gender representations, that is not in itself a film theory or film history topic. It needs to be placed into the context of film history or film theory, and it does fit fairly neatly into those contexts. But just to choose 2 films which appear to be fairly typical of gender representations or tend to reveal certain issues about gender representations is not enough in itself. So by placing it in a historical context or in a theoretical context, what would you have to do? Well, you would have to think about how the codings of the film relate to attitudes toward gender during the period of its production, and not the period represented, as some of you seem to make the mistake of, certainly in the oral presentations. So that's a fairly straightforward thing in itself, but the other point that you need to make when you're choosing your topic for the independent study is that you have to have a cinematic focus, even if you're doing a film history based topic. So that to explore, say, gender representations as they're revealed through plot is not going to score you anywhere better than the middle mark band. What you have to do is to explore the topic through focused textual analysis. Your findings need to be based on your readings of the films through the lens of the theoretical approach or the historical approach which you've adopted. I hope that's clear. If you have any questions about anything I'm saying right now, what I suggest that you do is to put your questions into the discussion forum which I established for this, and hopefully I can answer them at that time. I don't really plan on going on for too long this morning, nor do I plan on having a question and answer session, because I don't think that they're very useful with live sessions, certainly when there's nobody here. Oh, there is somebody here. Morning, Mohammed. How are you? Good to hear you, or see you, or whatever. So, to recap, your topic is about film history or film theory. If you choose genre, you need to actually show understanding of critical approaches to genre. You can't just talk about superhero films as they compare to one another in terms of plot. That isn't either a film history or a film theory topic, and you will score very poorly on that. You would need to place your films or your chosen films within the context of acknowledged critical approaches to genre. So it requires you to do some study into whichever area of film history or film theory you explore. Now, if you're going to explore the topic of film history, as I said, you need to place your films in the context of their production, and you need to actually establish how your chosen films reflect the concerns and values of the context of production, i.e. from the socio-cultural context through to the institutional context in which they're produced. So, for example, if you were to choose a film, again, returning to gender representation, say a film like It Happened One Night, which was made in 1933, I think, you would have to place that both in the broad cultural context, i.e. the US in the years following the Great Depression, and you would have to relate how the film constructs its codings in relation to that, but you'd also need to place it within the context of the Hollywood studio system and the implementation of the Hays Code in 1931. So you would therefore show some understanding of film history. Is that clear? If you were to look at realisms, you would actually have to place, say, the French New Wave or Dogma in the context of Italian neo-realism, which was the breakthrough tradition for realist codes in cinema. And when we talk about realism, you need to be very careful about your definitions here. You can't talk about realism in terms of verisimilitude. And if you don't know the word, you should look it up, because you should know it by now. You should talk about it in terms of realism as a film tradition. So you're talking about social realism, really. So anyway, to go back to my main topic, the main idea here. If you are to explore an issue of film history, or an issue of film genre, or an issue of film representations, and you say, oh, well, I'll use a formalist approach. Formalism as an area of film theory or film history doesn't really exist. It's a means by which we can determine filmmakers' intentions through textual analysis, through the textual analysis of the formal elements. But in itself, it's not really a legitimate area of film theory or film history. So the way that you could connect your idea, pursuing a particular thematic connection, through to a legitimate topic of film history or film theory would be to place your chosen films in a historical context and to explore the filmmaker's intentions through textual analysis and how the filmmaker's intentions relate to the broader socio-cultural context the films were made in. Wow, that was a kind of complex sentence. Maybe I'll try and repeat that and make some sense of that. But merely to say formalism is not good enough, top and bottom of it. But you can say that you are going to explore cinematic approaches or cinematic codings in your chosen films to explore how they relate to the historical context within your chosen theme, and that would be a legitimate film history topic. I hope that makes sense. If not, just ask a question when you get into the forum. Now, so potential topics. Well, what have we looked at? Fair bit. We've looked at narrative theory, so you could actually use something like the hero's journey. But if you were to use that, you would need to actually do textual analysis through the lens of the hero's journey. And you would actually have to have a thematic connection between films. So how does the hero's journey differ from the heroine's journey, for example? Because obviously the hero's journey is very kind of, it's kind of patrician and male-centric. So there are various sources online for developments of the heroine's journey. And personally, I don't particularly find Campbell's work very useful because trying to generalize about everything is often a way to overlook some of the important specifics of ideas. However, if that's the way you want to go, that's the way you want to go, that's fine. But what you would need to do is to explore how cinematic representations of different phases of the hero's journey are accomplished through the use of film language. You don't get to talk about plot in this at all, not if you want to score more than 10 out of 25. So, you need to find a topic. You need to find two films that the topic relates to. Okay? So, if your topic is gender representations, that's not going to be too difficult. Often people choose comparisons of Disney and Miyazaki. Quite often these are pretty unsuccessful because people merely look at plot and look at the most obvious aspects of Disney's gender representations and the most obvious aspects of Studio Ghibli's representations. But I read one recently which was very successful because it actually constructed a cogent argument based on focused cinematic analysis. So that's your task. So first of all, for the topic. Secondly, a thematic connection between films. And the films must be from different film cultures. As a rule of thumb, choose films which are made in different languages. Because, frankly, UK and US films are from the same film culture, as are Australian, New Zealand and Canadian films in English. Okay? So choose films of different languages because they will tend to represent different film cultures. You shouldn't have any difficulty finding thematic connections. You can find also historical connections between films of different cultures. You might look at the films of Yoshijiro Ozu in Japan and relate those to the various realist movements in Europe, or different realist movements throughout the world, or indeed new waves throughout the world. There's a very, very good book called...
You are currently the only person in this conference.
All right, it's just telling me I'm the only person in this conference, I know that. It's a very good book by Mark Cousins, which is, I think, called The Story of Film, and it's also a series of 12 or 13 documentary films. which is certainly worth watching if you want to expand your knowledge on world film history. And it's structured in a way which connects different trends and movements within film history across the world. It's an extraordinary piece of work and definitely worth seeing. That's really about all I need to say right now, because there are more details to go into about the independent study, but at this stage, you're really just beginning, and I don't want to overload you with too much information. Okay? In the autumn in the Northern Hemisphere, I'll do another one of these, which will be about how you go about writing your draft and how you go about setting out your independent study. So that's it for today. And if you have any questions, please use the discussion forum. Okay, bye-bye for now.